In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 185 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is culture. Our quote of the day comes to us from Mahatma Gandhi. A nation's culture resides in the hearts and in the soul of its people. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. It is quite an honor to bring you today's episode. I was introduced to Chuck Wells by another former guest of ours and best-selling author, John Gordon. Every now and then I find myself taking a copious amount of notes throughout our podcast interviews. Today's interview was one of them. I am and was incredibly humbled and grateful for the time that I was able to share with Chuck. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Chuck, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Absolutely. I'm really excited about this.
Now, I appreciate you spending some time with us in your busy schedule. So you and I ironically met via one of my former guests, a gentleman by the name of John Gordon, who is a best-selling author of many, many, many books, and he's worked with some of the most successful sports teams, both in college as well as professionally. And he shared your story a few weeks ago on his Instagram page, and you guys got the opportunity to meet, and you have a remarkable story about culture and what you've done with your baseball team, and I was wondering if you wouldn't mind just sharing that amazing story with us.
Absolutely. I just want to start out by saying that I'm a coach here in the North Texas area, and I'm just a regular high school math teacher and coach doing what I've been called to do, doing what I love to do. There's nothing special about me, though. It's just I have a heart for kids and for this sport and for making a difference. And so that's where it kind of starts. And then I kind of go from there. You know, I got the job here 12 years ago. I had a plan. I knew things needed to be changed, but I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have a real vision. There was no concrete plan. It was just kind of a sketch. The program I know needed vision. I know it needed accountability. It needed someone to love on these kids and also be committed to them, because they'd had 4 coaches in the previous 6 years or something like that. It was crazy. And there's a lot of trial and error. I had a plan that I really liked coming in, but some of the stuff we threw out, some of the stuff we kept. And then we hired a young assistant coach by the name of Kyle Mickles, and he is one of my closest friends and a confidant, and somebody that we're going to lock arms and go through this together. And so he came in at just the right time, perfect timing. It always is. And someone who believed in what I believed in. We started talking about, hey, how are we going to do things? What are we going to do? We had sayings, we had bracelets, we had word walls. We thought we had buy-in, but it was really about 50%. And then spring break happened in 2012 when we had some pushback and some kids skipped out on the tournament the weekend before spring break to go on spring break. Then there was an unfortunate incident during the week of spring break. Some kids made some poor choices. And so at that point, we challenged our kids. And one thing that I think we really did is we called them out, and we called their parents out. We had a conversation with dad and their kid in right field by themselves. And we kind of, in our vernacular here, we squared them up a bit and told them, hey, there's some stuff going on, and we want you guys to know, because we're dads. And as a dad, I would want to know. And so we kind of squared them up on that. Um, we we had to get rid of some kids, and then we really did some soul searching at the end of that year. And Coach Mickles and I did. We had senior meetings, and then we had meetings with the kids coming back. And then I'd already read the energy bus. I'd read the no complaining rule. I'd read training camp, and so there was some stuff I'd already read that I knew we needed, but it was just me. And so Coach Mickles read it. The kids said they wanted to be held accountable. They wanted things to be different. So then we said, okay, we're going to all read the energy bus. And that's where our admiration for John Gordon started, and realizing that here's our roadmap. Here's our plan. And it's been proven to work at a very, very high level. And we wanted to see, hey, can we get it to work at the high school level? And so we did. We did a book study. And we decided we were going to start being intentional about what the culture was at Richland High School in our baseball program here. We started speaking individually with kids, developing that relationship, having that one-on-one tough conversation with them. We started weeding out the vampires. We think we got it to about 90% that year that we did. That year before, we missed the playoffs by one game. It just kind of fell apart at the end. We were trusting guys we shouldn't trust. Then we came back the next year with 90% buy-in. We won 25 games, which was a school record, tied a school record. But we were still, that other 10% cost us in the playoffs. And we were in the playoffs, and we had a good team. We were going to make a run at it, and we got to game 3 of a series, and we needed that 10% to come through, and they couldn't because they weren't completely bought in. So we said, okay, well, we got to take the next step. So at the senior dinner the next year in 2013, we asked the kids what they want, and they said, well, we want things to be different. We want things to be different. We said, well, everybody says that. So how is it going to be different? And so we started going through how, what it's going to look like. And so that year we won 26 games. We get beat in the playoffs that year, 16-14 in a barn burner, just a slugfest out in West Texas. We had adopted the wolf pack mentality by a coach named Matt Deggs, who's a head baseball coach at Sam Houston State. That was at Texas A&M and University of Louisiana. And his story is a phenomenal story too. And so we decided, we were going to start changing a few things, and so we did. And we decided, first of all, that the character counts, and we wanted kids in our program with high character. That way, if we were going to get beat, then we're going to get beat with kids that we trust and that we could care for, and that we're going to make good decisions instead of getting beat by kids that we didn't really trust. And so we started doing that. I talked about Kyle as being one of the assistants. We hired another coach. His name is Wesley Hunter, who's a dear close friend of mine. That same beliefs, and he bought in 100%. So that took us to the next step. We spoke about the character a lot, and as we got more intentional about it, the buy-in became more. The Energy Bus started it. We did a thing called the Rebel Challenge, which is kind of our own little end of off season. Try to make it really physically and mentally challenging on the kids for a whole week, and hopefully most of the time it's when it's cold. It doesn't get cold here a lot, but that first year it was 15 degrees when we woke up that morning, so it was right on point. We did a thing called Thanksgiving to Providers, where we served we served our community, our high school, by collecting food for the people at our high school, and that went from 80 families up to 50 almost immediately. And then we started looking at, well, what kind of difference is this really going to make? And state championships are tough to win, and that's our hope. That's our big hope. But we realize, hey, we can change lives, and we can influence lives right where we're at. And if we do that, and we're very strategic about the way we do it, then we can do that, and we can make a difference in our community at our high school of about 2,100 kids at our high school. And we can make a difference, and to be satisfied with where we are doing that, and trying to really make a difference in each kid's lives individually. And that's one thing John Gordon says all the time. I set out to make a difference one life at a time. And of course, now he's a best-selling author and has all this stuff, and he gets to speak to huge crowds, and so that's what makes him really special. But he started out as, I want to make a difference to one person, and so we did. And so some of the things that we focused on where we wanted to control the controllables, the stuff that we can control, like our effort and attitude. We were going to start building transformational relationships over just transactional relationships. We're going to, and that goes back to like the grace and mercy part of it. It's not just, well, you made an error, so I'm going to take you out of the game. It's still loving on them and caring about them, or if they make a mistake off the field, we don't just send them up the road and forget about them. We stay with them and we show them grace and mercy, because every day of my life I'm given that, and so we had to make sure that we turn that back to them. We also stopped looking at the scoreboard. We stopped concentrating on what that scoreboard said each inning or at the end of a game. We look more at our improvement and at the process leading up to it, and our plan going in, and how we executed our plan. Then the no energy vampires thing is a huge thing for us. We're not gonna put up with that. People aren't gonna suck the life out of our practice, and that's not just our team, and that's not just the kids. That's parents too, and we speak this same language to them, and then it goes to the love and the accountability part. Our kids know that we love them. They know we're going to hold them accountable. And more importantly, our parents know that. And our parents know that we care for their kid. It's not transactional. It's not, well, I'm going to get 25 wins this year. That's not it. And these guys are going to love my kid. They're going to have good, deep conversations with them. It's not going to be surface focused. It's going to be under the surface type stuff. It's not going to be just words. It's going to be stuff that's making an impact. And with the lack of superstars here at Richland High School, we've had kids in our program that the other kids love and they want to follow, and they're not the superstars, but they're bought in 100%. And so it's contagious. The energy is contagious, as you know, and so is the rest of it. The whole culture thing is contagious when it's going in the right direction. It helps to win. And when we made this change, we go from winning 12 games the year before to 25, and then to 26. And we've only missed the playoff one time since 2012. But nobody would have known that based on just talking to our kids. The experience they've had and how much fun they've had and stuff is a big deal, and they loved it. And so, even the year we did miss the playoffs, it wasn't devastating to our program, to our culture. And so we just continue to work towards, the future and trying to find the next thing to do. The challenges every year is the same. We're getting new kids, and we got to make sure they buy in. We have a young team again this year, and they're a year older than they were really young last year. But they know we're going to serve them. They know we're going to care for them. We're working on the connection piece this year, and we're working on really having those in-depth discussions between our players. So at some point, our program is no longer where we're having to feed it. We want the kids to be the ones that are leading that culture instead of the coaches, because in the coaching profession, we feed the culture all the time. We try, and we want our kids to be able to do that. And once they figure that part out, then it's pretty special. And so as we look back and we think, okay, what are we going to do with these kids each year? And we have them for 4 years at the high school level. We tell their parents at the parent meeting, we have 4 years to help prepare them for the next 40. And the stuff that we're going to focus on is going to be far greater than any baseball accomplishment they have. We do not want any victory or any trophy they win in baseball to be the greatest moment of their life. We want, them being a great husband one day, a great father, a great employee or employer, a great talk show host or coach or whatever. We want them to the next 40 years of their life, that they'll be able to look back on the stuff that we talked about in our baseball program.
No, that's remarkable, and I appreciate you going as in depth as you did. And I think you hit on some amazing things, and a couple of things I just want to touch on is you talked about loving the players, you talked about controlling the controllables, and you talked about effort and attitude, and that's something that really stands out with us, because in regards to our podcast as well as our company, our speaking events, coaching and training, it's all about the things that you can control. And I think what you've done is amazing. And when you actually go down to the root of culture, whether it's a team, an organization, a charity, a family, a relationship, spouse to spouse, it's so important to get down to that basis. And I think the best thing from your story is it didn't happen overnight. If that success was that easy for everybody to happen overnight. No coaches would get fired. Every team would be champions, and you wouldn't have a job. I wouldn't have a job, and everything would be great. But that's the best and the worst parts about sports is you have to have a winner and a loser, and I think you never lose if you don't learn anything. Obviously you could lose the game, but you also could learn a lot. And I think, as you said, you've only missed the playoffs once since 2012, and I think that's an amazing accomplishment. So I want to ask you a question, Coach. If you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what would that word be?
That's a great question. Genuine. If it's just one word, I would say that people would see me as being genuine, not mistake-free. And I know that gets to more words, but just being genuine and true to what I believe. So that's my one word, would be genuine.
I think that's a perfect word for you. And how do you personally define success, or what does success look like for you?
Well, I think that you have to look at success in terms of significance too. And if you're choosing success over significance, then you're missing the boat. And as coaches, we do that because that scoreboard. But in my mind, that scoreboard lies to you, because there's a lot of great coaches in the state of Texas that have never won a state championship, but that are fabulous coaches, and they're building fabulous teams, and they've developed unbelievable relationships with their kids and tremendous culture. And so, if in my mind, I'm looking for the significance over the success, and how do I influence a kid's life again for that next 40 years, or what kind of relationship do I have with him? Is it transactional over transformational? Do they know? How much does that kid know at the end of the day that I love him? That I can walk out of the third base coach's box down, the kid's last out of the game, and it's 2 strikes on him, and the guy's throwing 95, and tell him, hey, I love you. Whatever happens here, we're going to be fine with you. Go relax and just play. And the kid believes it. And so my definition of success is, what kind of significance do you have in your community right where you are? The significance I have at this high school is far greater than the wins that we get in our baseball program.
No, I think that's an awesome definition. And speaking of quotes and speaking of scoreboard, there's a famous quote that I absolutely love by Nelson Mandela is, I never lose, I either win or learn. I was curious if you have a favorite quote of your own.
Man, the no energy vampires thing just sticks in my craw all the time, because I think it starts with that. That Nelson Mandela quote's awesome. And so I would go with no energy vampires. And the reason is because it goes into life too. If we tell our kids all the time, when you go home, if mom is not happy, then it feels like the house is not very happy. And so we got to figure out a way to make sure we get mom back on board. And so whenever they come in the dugout, it's the same thing, where we go, wait a second, we don't have any energy vampires in here. You're distracting us and you're sucking the life out of us. You need to go back out and come back in, or go back out and stay out for today. And so no energy vampires is big for us.
Now, assuming some of our listeners have not read any of John's books, and again, he was one of the first 20 guests on our podcast when we first launched it, but if you had to, in the shortest amount of time, just quickly tell our listeners what energy vampires are, I think that'd be important too.
Absolutely. So everybody, you have a good person and a bad person speaking to you all the time internally, and so it's who do you feed, who do you let speak. And so we're trying to get the positive person to speak. And so you have a bunch of people together that are kind of part of your team. In our situation, it's part of our team. And then one person comes in with a negative attitude, or in a bad mood, or having a bad moment, or whatever the case may be. And they try to pull people with them. And instead of trying to be part of the positive energy, they try to go the other direction, and they try to pull people with them, not by themselves, because you can push them out. But when they start pulling people with them, then we call them energy vampires. You're sucking the life out of the room. I mean, everybody's been around that. Everybody has seen that when someone walks in the room and they start complaining, and it just sucks the life out of you and sucks the life out of whatever's going on. And so that's my quick definition of an energy vampire.
No, I love that. And the flip side to that is, we all know those people in our lives, whether it's personally, professionally, that when they enter a room, everybody's attitude picks up and everybody smiles. And I think it's amazing when you have both those people, because the reality is if you didn't have any energy vampires, you wouldn't have the opposite, the positive component of it. But if you didn't have the positive piece, you wouldn't have the other. So I think it's really interesting, and I'm glad you touched on that. I wanted to ask you, Chuck, if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself one piece of advice, assuming the 20-year-old version would listen, what would that advice have been?
To stick to your plan, be patient and stick to your plan. Adjust when you need to adjust. You have to be flexible in all these situations, because my plan is not the perfect plan. There is one out there, and we're striving to do that. But I would say to stick to your plan, be patient, and continue to grow. I don't know enough now, and we're launching our season right now, and I don't know enough, but we're growing, and our team is growing, and the people I have around me, the staff I have around me is phenomenal, and we're great friends. And so it sure makes it easy whenever that is the case. And so once that happened, like I told you about the first coach that we had with me, once that happened, it became contagious, and the plan started working a little better.
No, it is contagious, and I think so is losing as well. Is when teams get in a little bit of a rut. That's why you have winning streaks and you have losing streaks, because it is contagious, and it's important to make sure that you focus on it and you don't dwell on just a scoreboard. I wanted to ask you, if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Well, my first choice would be Jesus Christ, and because I have lots of questions, and I think it'd be awesome. But I think that's probably an easy answer there. I got to have dinner with John Gordon 2 weeks ago, and every question, the stuff we're discussing right now, and the stuff that we're doing in our program was stuff we could sit and talk to him like a normal person, and it was pretty phenomenal.
I think it's amazing that you reference John in that way. And you and I were speaking before we went offline. Is John works with teams such like Clemson football, who have won another national championship the past year. He's worked with professional teams. He wrote a book with the former Atlanta Falcons head coach. John is in front of these amazing people that have done amazing things, incredibly successful. But the best part about John is that he's a real person where you can sit down and you can talk to him. I think that'd be an amazing dinner. So maybe you can set up dinner with you, myself, and John, and I'll just tag along, and I promise I won't say anything.
Hey, I promise you, if we could, I would do that in a heartbeat.
All right, I'll figure out a way to make it happen. We'll have to both take a trip down to Texas.
Yes.
So you had mentioned one of our favorite words, and on our apparel line, on the back of everything, is #accountability. So I wanted to ask you, Coach, what does accountability mean to you?
Well, I think it goes deeper than just that word. The accountability piece is it can be for yourself. And in a team environment, it's for yourself. It's for your team. It's for your teammates. It's for your coaches. It's for your family. That you're going to do the right thing, and people know you're going to do the right thing. One of the things we talk about is there's certain things that people think about you, but there's not much that people truly know about you. And so accountability would be the stuff people know about you. Because I can trick you in saying whatever I want as a kid to a coach and convince the coach that I'm not doing stuff that I'm not supposed to be doing. But that kid is the only one that truly knows, instead of just what the coach thinks, And so accountability to me is being committed and being connected and being in that relationship and it being deeper than just, hey, be at practice at 2:30 today. It's deeper than that, and it's the stuff that we know is right, not the stuff that people think about us, because you can't control what people think about you. That people can say whatever they want, but the stuff that people know, that's whenever it would bother me, is if there's if somebody knew something about me that was off, then that's when it's a big deal, not the stuff that people just think about me. And so being accountable is the stuff that people know about you, and the stuff that people know who you are.
Now, a follow-up question to that is, one of the things we often touch on is the idea or the phraseology of paying it forward. And I wanted to ask you, what does paying it forward mean to you or your team?
For our team, it's the connection piece between the seniors down through our program, all the way down to our freshmen. We had a kid that got drafted a few years ago out of here, and his biggest quality, even through all the distractions of his senior year going to be drafted, is that he was trying to influence the kids that were younger than him, and not just well, I'm a senior and I'm really good. I'll hit you ground balls after practice. I'll talk to you. I'll come and do summer camps even after I get drafted. And so that they're pouring back into the program and back into their community, into their school, even when they're older. And a senior that's on his way out, and maybe he is a superstar, maybe he's not. He's just a senior in the program, but that they're trying to influence and make a difference in those younger kids. And so I think that's one way that we try to encourage our kids here at our program to invest back into our program.
I love the word you've used a couple times, is community. And I think that's the best thing I've taken from your story and from this interview is you're a teammate, someone who's on your team. You're also a member of that community, whether it's school, whether it's town, whether it's city. And I think that's one of the best things that sports can do is you can connect, obviously, teammates with fans and coaches, but you also have the ability to connect with that town, whether it's college or professional, with that city. And I think that's one of the things that people often miss is you can have an impact on the field or on the court or on the ice. And in that game, whether you win or lose, whether you win a championship or have a really poor season, but you also can have those long-lasting impacts on an entire community. And I think you've touched on that quite a few times, and I think it's pretty remarkable. Wanted to ask you, Chuck, what's the best way for our listeners to either connect with you, follow you, or to find out a little bit more about you as well as your team?
Well, I'm at Richland High School in Fort Worth, Texas. I have a Twitter account. It's Chuck and then the letters NRG Wells. And then on Instagram, Chuck Wells is my Instagram name. And you can look me up that way and direct message me, or we can figure out a way to connect. That's kind of how you and I got connected. So I'd love to talk to people about any of this stuff.
No, I think definitely I would recommend not only any of our listeners that are coaches themselves, whatever level that may be, but also people in the business or even with family. And some of the stuff you touched on, you had mentioned family and being a member of the family quite a bit. And I think that's such a great overlapping component. So I would definitely recommend our listeners to connect with you. And I wanted to ask you, Chuck, before we let you go, if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Well, first of all, I really appreciate getting to do this. I do want to say what our little mantra is here at Richland High School, and we use the letters NRG. And on the email I was getting from you at the bottom, it said no excuses, and that's pretty neat because that's what the N stands for in our postings here on our field. It's the N stands for no excuses, no matter what. There's no excuse for you having a bad attitude. You can have a bad moment, but not a bad day. The R stands for respect. And so we encourage our kids to be respectful of everybody around them. And then the letter G stands for grind. Life's a grind, and we have to grind it out every day as adults, and kids do too. And so, that I just wanted to kind of share that because that's part of who we are and what we like to do and how we're encouraging our kids.
That is awesome. I did not know that that's what the NRG stands for. I assumed it was something with the energy bus, so you gave me a pleasant surprise. When does the official first game come out?
We start on February 21st, which is this coming Thursday. The weather in Texas could be 30 degrees that day. It also could be 85. We have our last scrimmage tonight. Our kids will be here about 2:30 today. It's going to be pretty awesome. So we're excited about the upcoming season.
Well, listen, Coach, I truly appreciate not only the time you shared with us, but also the information. And I wish you not only the best of luck tonight in your scrimmage, but also this season as well. And I definitely look forward to hopefully speaking with you again soon.
Absolutely a thrill for me to do this, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to episode number 185. Chuck absolutely delivered some great stuff on today's show. When Chuck became a head coach, he made a tough decision that would most likely cost his team a few victories at first. However, in the end, Chuck has not only turned his team around, but he has changed the culture in a very dramatic and positive fashion. One thing Chuck said hit home when he shared the concept of controlling the controllables as well as controlling both your attitude and effort. Chuck's team has a mantra, NRG, which I absolutely love. The N stands for no excuses. The R stands for respect, and the G is for grind. One thing that was evident throughout today's interview was just how much Chuck cares and loves his players, both on and off the baseball field. Early on in the interview, Chuck described the importance of making a difference in other people's lives, but starting with one person. A team, family, or a company's culture can change significantly, but it always starts with one person. My question to you is just that. Who can you help today? Who can you be there for? Doesn't have to be big or huge, but I challenge you today, as we continue with our motto of paying it forward, to be there and help someone else today, and do it just for them. Don't expect, ask, or anticipate anything in return. And as you go for your greatness today, continue to pay it forward for others. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.